Well, despite the best efforts to move on from Epstein, this just is not going away. It seems to be a bridge too far, even for the most loyal MAGA supporters. Crimes of this nature just simply cannot be moved on from. The Gateway Pundit today reports Epstein horrors, official sleight of hand about millions of pages of unreleased evidence. It's not all child porn and not all destroyed. It says the Department of Justice and the White House knows that there are millions of Epstein-related documents that are still in existence. Part of the response so far has been to characterize the remaining documents as all being related to child porn. And the alleged child porn that Epstein had on his personal devices is irrelevant to what the public is seeking. Documents and evidence about Epstein, where his wealth came from, who aided his criminal and espionage enterprise, who was being blackmailed, and who covered it up. As the Gateway Pundit exclusively showed yesterday, though, plenty of public evidence could give the DOJ cause to file a criminal investigation into dead alleged child abusers linked to Epstein to find the clients, uncover more evidence, and get prosecutions. Trump supporters and longtime allies are expressing major frustration across the country at the way the Epstein affair and issues like Iran and Ukraine has been handled since January. It goes on. Worth noting is that it was the then Bill Barr Department of Justice that had custody of Epstein when he died under extremely suspicious circumstances in the first place, with Barr, whose father had first employed Epstein, declaring that Epstein killed himself. Let's look at what the White House said this week about further evidence in the Epstein case. So the reporter asks, Caroline, the DOJ and FBI have now concluded there was no Jeffrey Epstein client list. What do you tell MAGA supporters who say they want anyone involved in Epstein's alleged crimes held accountable? Levitt replied, this administration wants anyone who's ever committed a crime to be accountable. And I would argue this administration has done more to lock up bad guys than certainly the previous administration. She continued, the Trump admin is committed to truth and transparency. Okay. That's why the Attorney General and the FBI Director pledged at the president's direction to do an exhaustive review of all the files related to Jeffrey Epstein's crimes and his death. They put out a memo in conclusion of that review. There was material they did not release because, frankly, it was incredibly graphic and contained child pornography, which is not something that is appropriate for public consumption, she added. But they committed to an exhaustive investigation. That's what they did, and they provided the result of that. That's transparency, Levitt said. So the article goes on, there is no evidence that an exhaustive investigation has occurred to date. The public wants to see prosecutions of powerful and elite politicians, businessmen, and others who went to Epstein's Little St. John Island, engaged in sex with underage teens and children, and these criminals are apparently beyond the reach of the law. Some online and news reports claim that Epstein's legal immunity comes from his possible relationship to intelligence agencies. Others, such as writer Whitney Webb, claims that it goes even further than that, reaching to a decades-long bipartisan global organized crime syndicate that utilizes blackmail as its operating principle. This public pressure is not about wanting to see videos of child abuse. It is about naming names and holding criminals to account regardless of their wealth or status. Online, some have noted that the Epstein case challenges a core American judicial concept of equal justice under law, regardless of how wealthy or important a defendant. On April 27th, Attorney General Bondi released Phase 1 of the Epstein files, which included 350 pages, and all but 3 of the pages had been previously released to the public. Those 15 or so who participated in the release of the files, which appeared to be a select group of conservative influencers, were widely ridiculed for the photo op they staged after receiving the binders of information. The article continues, the DOJ knows where millions of pages of more Epstein-related files are at. As some pointed out online, it is simply inconceivable that there are not more files to share and more files to offer the public. And we showed you yesterday that Anna Paulina Luna was echoing exactly that. It has been said that the FBI received tips, reports, and complaints about Epstein's activities and crimes from 1996 to 2006. The FBI did not open a case until July 24, 2006. These files have not been turned over. On May 25th, 2017, the publication Radar Online filed suit in the Southern District of New York for files related to the prosecution of Jeffrey Epstein. It's got the case number there. As part of that litigation, it emerged that at least 11,571 pages of documents were relevant and being withheld from release. Additionally, further along in the litigation, it emerged that there were tens of thousands of pages of records that were in the government's possession as of July 2019. Federal authorities, as part of the criminal prosecution of Ghislaine Maxwell in United States versus Ghislaine Maxwell, and you can see the reference there, AJN reportedly turned over to Maxwell's defense team millions of documents. In some reports, up to 3 million documents are referenced. Documents, generally speaking in criminal cases, are not turned over unless they are exculpatory or showing innocence, or inculpatory showing guilt, meaning that all of these documents were relevant to Maxwell's defense in her criminal trial. Maxwell's defense team, as part of docket number 116 in the trial, submitted a letter to the judge where they asked for a special laptop for Maxwell while in jail so that she could more easily and readily access these millions of documents that were provided by the DOJ to the defense relevant to her criminal trial. The relevant excerpt from page 2 of the letter is below. You can see there, given the millions of documents. It's very, very clear. If Ghislaine Maxwell and her defense attorneys were able to get millions of pages of documents related to the Epstein child sex trafficking ring, why can't the public get access to more than 350 pages of already released files? There's also a wide variety of other evidence the Department of Justice could obtain if they just made a phone call or sent an email. So a few examples here. Number one, get additional follow-up statements from victims, those who witnessed these crimes and those who aided Epstein, some of who were given immunity agreements. We mentioned the victims just the other day when we were reporting on this. They could examine Epstein's alleged insider trading stock trades to identify financial crimes and possible other confederates of Epstein. They could pull and check the suspicious activity reports generated by banks when large transfers over $10,000 are made by customers. We're all subjected to that. I'm sure that Epstein could be. And then further track where those payments were made and where Epstein's mysterious sources of cash came from. They could examine Epstein's tax returns and look for the sources of income. They could review the estimated 15 hours of unreleased interviews made by Steve Bannon to help Epstein prepare for testifying and for a documentary that was never released. They could review the property records from Epstein's many estates across the country. They could review the Florida prosecution records where he was investigated in 2006 and took a sweetheart plea deal in 2008 from then federal prosecutor Alex Acosta. They could review the over 11,000 FBI records that were identified as part of an ongoing FOIA lawsuit involving the publication of Radar Online. So the idea that there is nothing left to release, or that the only thing left to release is child pornography, is just completely wrong, says the Gateway Pundit. It's false, they say. This evidence is certainly still in existence and still maintained due to the pending Maxwell appeals that are ongoing. That's happening too, by the way. As well, the Maxwell defense team clearly has these documents, even if they were destroyed by the deep state at the Department of Justice, as many online are speculating. Her defense team would have documents relating to all of this. These files are still around, and the cynicism about whether the files were destroyed might make sense given the murky history in the Epstein prosecution so far. But as long as active legal appeals are ongoing, these files are almost assuredly still around. If the public stops demanding access to these files because they believe the deep state destroyed them, then it will take the pressure off the department to turn over what they actually clearly still have access to, the article says. Legal filings show that immunity agreements were also given to Epstein's likely co-conspirators, including Sarah Kellen, Adriana Ross, Leslie Groff, and Nadia Marcinkova, as noted in legal filings. These individuals could and should be interviewed, and those who were not given immunity agreements, which number in the dozens, according to this Politico piece which they link there, could be prosecuted or at least interviewed to find additional evidence. The known victims and their families could also be interviewed or re-interviewed to determine what they know and what additional evidence they might have relevant to a prosecution. This is something we said just the other day in one of our broadcasts. The article concludes with a list of known public victims of Epstein and concludes as well with the Department of Justice estimated that there are over 1,000 victims of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. There is no federal statute of limitations for prosecuting the sexual abuse of a child. Something that the public should also be aware of is that the public statements made by the FBI and DOJ related to this Epstein case closed, nothing to see here, nothing further to release, are actually at odds with what's going on with a Judicial Watch case at the moment. We want to show you this from Judicial Watch. Justice Department reports to court it is reviewing FBI, DOJ, Epstein records for possible release. This is published just yesterday. So it says, Judicial Watch announced it filed a joint status report on July 7 in federal court, reporting that the Justice Department and the FBI continue to search for and review records in response to Judicial Watch's Freedom of Information Act lawsuit for records regarding Jeffrey Epstein. The lawsuit requests any records on the identities of clients or associates of Epstein. The Justice Department's disclosure is at odds with the leaked, unsigned, and undated memo that suggests no more Epstein records would be disclosed to the American public. The memo was first disclosed late on July 6. So Judicial Watch sued the Justice Department and FBI in April of 2025 after they failed to adequately respond to 3 separate FOIA requests for records that were filed in February of 2025 concerning Epstein, including a specific request for records depicting the identities of clients or associates of Epstein. Epstein document request was sent to the DOJ Office of Information Policy, the Criminal Division, and 2 separate requests were sent to the FBI also. So, in summary, what we gather here is the DOJ and FBI are telling the courts something completely different to what is being told to the public. The public is told there is nothing more to review or see following an exhaustive review. The courts are being told they are still in the process of said exhaustive review. Nothing adds up here, and more importantly, the public at large sees it. We don't think the demand for answers is going away anytime soon.